My mom banned me from my sister's graduation over my hair and then pretended it never happened. She told me I was not allowed to attend my own sister's graduation. Not because I did something wrong. Not because I caused any drama. Because of my hair. Let that sink in for a second. My mother looked at me, her 26-year-old son, and decided that the length of my hair was a good enough reason to bar me from one of the most important days of my sister's life. And the wildest part is that the whole thing started with a lie. A week before the graduation, my mother came to me and said I needed to get a haircut because my sister wanted me to look nice for her big day. That was the story. That was the justification. My sister wants this, so you need to do it. And honestly, if my sister had actually said that to me directly, I probably would have at least had a real conversation about it. Family is family. I would have sat down with her, looked her in the eye, and tried to figure out a compromise that felt okay for both of us. But something about the way my mother delivered this message felt rehearsed. It felt constructed. There was this particular confidence in her voice that she only gets when she has already decided how a conversation is going to end, and she was just walking me through the motions of it. So instead of going straight to a barbershop, I went and talked to my sister myself, and what she told me completely flipped the script. My sister said she did not care at all whether I got a haircut. Not a little bit. Not in a polite way where she was hiding her real feelings behind a smile and saying what she thought I wanted to hear. She genuinely did not care. She had not thought about my hair for even a second in relation to her graduation. When I explained what our mother had told me, I watched my sister's expression change in real time. She went from confused to frustrated to something quieter and more tired, the look of someone realizing they have been used without their knowledge. My mother had invented the whole thing from scratch, used my sister's name and my sister's milestone to pressure me into changing my appearance, and had not even told my sister she was doing it. When I went back to my mother with this information and confronted her about the lie, she did not apologize. She did not explain herself. She did not even flinch the way most people do when they are caught in something they know was wrong. She just shut me down and said she needed to talk to my sister. And then she went and wore my sister down. She argued with her so persistently, on the week of her own graduation, that my sister eventually gave up and texted me asking me to just get the haircut so the fighting would stop. Think about that for a moment. My sister, who should have been celebrating and enjoying the lead up to one of the biggest accomplishments of her life, who should have been picking out her outfit and calling her friends and feeling the particular giddiness that comes with knowing something huge is almost here, was instead spending her energy being dragged into an argument she never started and never wanted. She was on the phone with our mother getting worn down like a stone in a river, slowly, steadily, without pause, until she just did not have the will to resist anymore. My mother turned a celebration into a negotiation, and she used my sister as leverage to do it. Now, I want to be honest here, because this story deserves honesty. My hair is not some wild artistic statement. I have been growing it out and I like how it looks. Strangers have complimented it. Friends have told me it suits me. It has actually become a source of real confidence for me. And if you have ever been someone who does not feel particularly attractive and then suddenly starts getting positive attention for something about your appearance, you understand exactly why that matters. There is something that happens in you when you stop dreading your reflection and start feeling okay with who is looking back. That is not a small thing. That is not vanity. That is a person finding something that makes them feel good about themselves, and being told to erase it for a photograph that would last maybe 5 minutes in someone's camera roll. My mother has never liked my hair this way. She has thrown fits about it before, on other occasions, for other reasons that always turned out to be the same reason. When she used to cut my hair, she would style it slicked back in a way that I genuinely hated. Not mildly disliked. Hated. It was a look that flattened everything I had come to like about my face and replaced it with something that felt like a costume someone else had chosen for me. I would look in the mirror and not recognize the person looking back, and not in an interesting way, in a deflating way. I do not have split ends. My hair is healthy and clean and well kept. There is no practical reason it needed to be cut. The only reason on the table was that my mother preferred it shorter, and she had decided to use my sister's graduation as the vehicle to finally force the issue, because she knew the emotional stakes were high enough that I might fold. When I told my mother I was still not going to get the haircut, she did not argue further. She did something far more extreme. She told me I was not allowed to come to the graduation. She controlled the transportation. She controlled access to the parking arrangements. She had coordinated everything in a way that made her the gatekeeper, and she used every bit of that logistical leverage to make sure I physically could not be there. This was not a frustrated parent making an empty threat in the heat of a moment and then quietly walking it back an hour later. She meant it, and she had spent enough time thinking through the logistics to know she had the means to follow through. That level of premeditation tells you something. That is not a reaction. That is a strategy. Here is what makes this so much worse to me. My mother then started telling people how awful it was of me to refuse to do something so simple for my sister. She framed it as me being selfish. She made it sound like I was the one making the graduation about myself, that I cared more about my hair than about my sister's big day, and she told this version of the story with the calm certainty of someone who had already convinced themselves it was true. But stop and think about who actually made the graduation about something other than the graduate. My sister did not ask for any of this. My sister did not want a haircut argument in the week before her ceremony. My sister wanted to graduate and celebrate and feel proud of herself. My mother is the one who manufactured this entire conflict, escalated it when confronted, weaponized it against me, recruited my exhausted sister into the middle of it, and then positioned herself as the reasonable one in the aftermath. The audacity of that reframe is genuinely impressive in a deeply uncomfortable way. Let me be clear about the body autonomy angle here too, because it is important. I am 26 years old. I live at home, yes, but that does not make my body a communal resource that my family gets to vote on. The idea that a grown adult should have to alter their physical appearance to attend a family event, not because it is inappropriate or disrespectful, but simply because a parent prefers a different style, is genuinely strange when you say it plainly. We do not tell people to gain or lose weight before weddings. We do not tell people to change their clothing to match someone else's aesthetic vision of what the group should look like in photos. Hair is no different. It belongs to the person wearing it. The moment we accept that family events come with appearance requirements enforced through punishment, we have accepted something that should make all of us a little uncomfortable. Now here is a thing worth sitting with. My mother's position, underneath all the noise, is that I should have just done it because it was easy and it would have made the day smoother. And I do understand that argument. It costs me about 30 minutes and some mild discomfort to sit in a chair and let someone cut my hair. On a pure effort scale, it is not a big ask. But there is a difference between something being easy and something being right. Getting the haircut would have confirmed for my mother that this tactic works. That lying about what my sister wants, applying enough pressure, and then using access to an event as a punishment is a legitimate way to get what she wants from me. And once a tactic is confirmed to work, it does not retire. It gets reused. That lesson has consequences that extend far beyond graduation weekend, and I was not willing to be the one who taught it. I also want to talk about what my sister actually said in that text, because it is easy to read her message as taking my mother's side, and it is not that simple. My sister told me to just get the haircut because she did not want to deal with the arguments on her day. That is a person at the end of their rope sending a message from a place of exhaustion, not from a place of agreement. That is not my sister saying I am wrong. That is my sister being completely drained by a conflict she was dragged into without her consent, without her knowledge, without anyone asking her how she felt about any of it. She was not siding with my mother. She was begging both of us to stop making her graduation a battlefield. She had already been through days of this by the time she sent that text, and she just wanted it to be over. The fact that my mother pushed her to that breaking point, on that specific week of all weeks, is something my sister is going to carry with her long after the ceremony photos are printed and the flowers have dried out. Then the morning of the graduation arrived, and something shifted. My mother woke me up and told me to get ready to go. No explanation. No apology. No acknowledgement of the threats she had made, the pressure she had applied, the lie she had told, or any of the things that had been said over the preceding week. Her voice had that studied neutrality to it, the kind people use when they want to skip over a conflict without admitting it happened. Just get ready. And I did. I got up, I got dressed, my hair still exactly the length it had been all week, and I went. My mother was still quietly unhappy about it in the way she always is when she does not get what she wants but cannot say so openly. And the whole manufactured crisis just quietly dissolved, like it had evaporated overnight, like it had never happened. She had outlasted herself. She took a hard line, held it for days, discovered that I was going to hold mine harder than she expected, and then reversed course entirely rather than actually follow through on keeping me away from my own sister's graduation. I want to acknowledge something uncomfortable here. There is a version of this story where people look at me and say that I made my sister's week harder than it needed to be. And I hear that. I genuinely do. But I also think that framing puts the responsibility in the wrong place. My mother created this situation by lying. My mother escalated it by refusing to back down when she was caught. My mother wore my sister down during a week that should have belonged entirely to her. I refused to comply with a demand that was based on a fabricated justification and rooted in a belief that my mother gets to decide what my body looks like. Those are two very different things, and collapsing them into one shared blame is exactly what my mother was counting on. What really gets me is the ease with which my mother tried to rewrite what happened after the fact. Once it was over, once I was at the graduation with my long hair and my sister was smiling and the day went on without any actual problems, my mother's behavior in the preceding week just ceased to be discussed. That is a pattern I have watched play out before. Escalate, get caught, apply maximum pressure, reverse when it does not work, and then behave as though revisiting the original lie is the real act of aggression. And if I bring it up later, if I try to have an honest conversation about what actually happened, I become the person keeping drama alive. The original lie disappears. Only my refusal to let it go remains visible. Here is the truth about this whole situation, the real takeaway that goes beyond haircuts and graduation photos. My mother does not believe I have the right to say no to her about my own appearance. She proved that by lying to create pressure. She proved that by escalating to a punishment when the lie was not enough. She proved that by reversing only when the punishment did not work, and by never once addressing the lie that started everything. Until that belief changes in a real and lasting way, this will happen again over something else. The specific thing will be different. The structure will be the same. The hair was never the point. Control was always the point. Let me be direct about where I land. My mother was wrong from the first sentence she said to me about this. She fabricated a request from my sister, weaponized my sister's graduation to force compliance, punished me when it did not work, and then never once took accountability for any of it. My sister is the real victim of this story. She deserved a peaceful and joyful week leading into her ceremony, and instead she spent part of it being slowly ground down by an argument she never started and never asked to be part of. I am not going to say I handled every moment perfectly. There were probably versions of this where I could have de-escalated sooner or communicated differently or found some way to lower the temperature before it reached the point of threats. But the core of my position, that a 26-year-old man does not owe his mother control over his haircut for any occasion, is correct. That is not selfishness. That is basic adulthood. And the fact that I was almost excluded from my sister's graduation for holding that line is something that should concern anyone who cares about what healthy family dynamics actually look like. My mother won nothing here. She backed down. She showed up the morning of and said get ready, because in the end she did not actually want to be the person who kept her son away from his daughter's graduation. And somehow, she also did not want to admit that. She wanted the haircut and the retreat with no consequences and no conversation. She got neither. And honestly, that is exactly what this situation deserved. My wife wants Disney World, but I swore I would never go back, and now our marriage is the battleground. They want to spend thousands of dollars on a place he already went to once and swore he would never return to. And now the entire weight of his family's happiness is sitting on his shoulders, like he is the bad guy for having an opinion about where his own money goes. This is a Disney World argument, yes. But underneath it, this is a story about who gets to decide what a family vacation looks like, and whether one person's absolute refusal to enjoy something counts as a reason to skip it. Let us start with the setup, because it is actually pretty fair. His kids are getting to the age where vacations will stick in their memories. His wife has been pushing hard for Disney World. The kids love Disney movies and shows. On the surface, that all makes sense. Disney World is the kind of place that a lot of parents feel obligated to take their children to at least once, almost like it is a rite of passage that gets marketed as a universal childhood experience. The brochures show laughing children and tearful parents watching their kids meet their favorite characters for the first time, and that image is so thoroughly embedded in the culture that saying no to it can feel like saying no to childhood itself. So the wife is not being unreasonable for wanting to go. She is responding to a very loud cultural message that tells parents this is what good childhoods look like. But here is where it gets real. He went to Disney World before kids. He and his wife went together, just the two of them, presumably with the freedom to move at their own pace, skip what they wanted, and leave when the magic wore thin. And by his account, it was miserable. Not mildly disappointing in the way that overhyped things often are. Not underwhelming in that quiet, deflating way where you shrug and admit it was fine. Miserable enough that he made an actual personal vow to never go back. Think about that for a second. Most people endure a bad experience and file it away under lessons learned. He came home from that trip and arrived at a firm, deliberate conclusion. He looked back at what he had just spent, and the hours he had just stood in lines under the Florida sun, and the crowds pressing in from every direction, and the feeling of being managed and herded through an experience designed to extract maximum money from him at every turn, and he thought, with complete clarity, that was not worth it, and I do not want to do that again. And his reasons for not wanting to go are not just about personal enjoyment, which is important to point out because a lot of people will immediately jump to calling him selfish. The cost is genuinely extreme. Disney World is not a budget destination anymore, and the days of finding affordable ways to make the trip work are largely gone. He is right about that. When you start adding up the ticket prices, the hotel costs on or near property, the food inside the parks where a quick-service lunch for a family of 4 can cost as much as a sit-down dinner at a decent restaurant back home, and the add-ons that used to be included and now cost extra, it climbs to a number that would make most middle-class families sit very still before committing to it. Wait, did he just describe a Disney vacation as something that involves paying extra to wait in a shorter line? Yes, he did. And he is completely right, and somehow that is a thing people just accept now. The crowd situation is also real, and it is not getting better. Disney World has become a victim of its own mythology. Everyone wants to go because everyone has been told their whole lives that everyone goes. More people flood through those gates every year. The parks have a physical capacity that does not grow as fast as the demand does, and the result is wall-to-wall people pressing through every walkway, multi-hour waits for popular rides that you can watch ticking upward on your phone screen, and an experience that is as much about logistics management as it is about magic. The app they give you to manage your day, the one that is supposed to make the whole thing smoother and more enjoyable, has become its own source of low-grade anxiety because you are essentially working a shift of appointment scheduling just to have a fighting chance at riding the things you actually paid to ride. You are not on vacation. You are project managing your own vacation in real time while standing in the heat. His third reason is the one I think deserves the most attention and gets the least credit in conversations like this. He says that for the same amount of money, they could take their kids to dozens of other places where they would get more out of it. And he is absolutely right. That same budget could open up national parks where kids stand at the edge of something genuinely enormous and wordless and feel the kind of awe that no engineered ride can manufacture. It could pay for an international trip where children encounter a different language, different food, different architecture, and come home slightly changed by the world. It could fund a beach week where nobody has to be anywhere at a particular time, or a road trip through parts of the country the family has never seen, pulling over whenever something interesting appears on the horizon. The idea that Disney World is the peak of what children can experience on vacation is a marketing achievement, not a factual claim. There is a whole world out there, and a lot of it costs significantly less and offers significantly more in terms of actual experience, actual memory, actual weight. Then he gets to the fourth reason and he calls it his most selfish one. He just does not enjoy it. He gets zero personal pleasure from being there. He can feel himself going through the motions, absorbing none of it, watching the clock, counting the hours until he can be somewhere else. He acknowledges that watching his family have fun is a form of enjoyment and that he does plenty of things for the sake of his family's happiness, willingly, without complaint. But he draws a line here. He says he feels like they could plan a trip that includes something for everyone instead of defaulting to the one destination that he has already experienced and categorically rejected. And I think that is the key sentence in this entire post. He is not saying he refuses to take his kids anywhere. He is not saying his enjoyment trumps his children's happiness. He is not sitting across from his wife with his arms crossed saying that the vacation does not happen unless it meets his personal approval. He is saying that there exists an option, probably multiple options, where everyone at the table gets something real out of the experience. That is not a selfish position. That is actually a pretty mature one. Selfishness would be insisting on a trip that only he wants. What he is suggesting is that the vacation pie does not have to be divided between Disney World and nothing, that there are other slices worth looking at, and that maybe one of those other slices tastes good to everyone. Now I want to be honest about the hardest part of his argument, because this is the thing that his wife and potentially his kids might push back on hardest. Disney is not just a theme park to a lot of children. It is a specific place they have seen and talked about and built quiet daydreams around, because the movies and the shows and the merchandise and every other kid in their class who came back with a Mickey ear headband has created an expectation that sits in a child's mind as something almost sacred. When a child says they want to go to Disney World, they are often not making an open comparison between available vacation options. They are asking to step inside the stories they love, to stand in a place that feels like it should not exist in the real world but somehow does, and to bring home proof that it happened. That is real, and it has real emotional weight that cannot just be argued away. But that emotional weight was manufactured. Not maliciously, and not cynically in a way that diminishes what children feel, but deliberately and with extraordinary skill. Disney is very good at making children want to go to Disney World from the earliest possible age. That is not magic. That is decades of calculated brand building, and understanding that does not make the feelings less real, but it does put them in a different frame. The question is not whether his kids would enjoy Disney. They probably would, at least some of it, some of the time. The question is whether that enjoyment, weighed against the significant financial cost and the logistical stress and the fact that he has already been there and walked away with a firm and unhappy verdict, is enough to tip the scale toward going. Here is where I come down on this. He is not the asshole in this situation. He has legitimate, well-reasoned objections that go beyond personal preference. He experienced the park firsthand and came away with a clear verdict. He is not inventing reasons. He is not being arbitrary or dramatic or difficult for the sake of it. He is looking at a significant financial and personal commitment and saying that the return on investment does not justify it for his family, and that there are better alternatives. That is responsible parenting and honest partnership, not obstinacy. What he should do, and what I think he is already leaning toward, is come to the table with a real alternative. Not just a refusal, but a plan. A trip that includes something his kids are excited about, something his wife wants, and something he can actually enjoy being present for rather than grinding through on sheer willpower. That is the version of this conversation that leads somewhere good. Because right now the choice feels like Disney World or nothing, and it does not have to be. The verdict here is clear. His objections are real, his reasoning is sound, and his suggestion that they find a vacation that works for everyone is the most reasonable thing anyone has said in this conversation. The wife is not wrong for wanting to create magical memories for their kids. But magical memories are not a Disney World exclusive. They happen anywhere a family shows up together and chooses to be present, and they do not require a second mortgage or a full day of waiting in line for a 4-minute ride. The deeper issue is that Disney has been framed as the default correct answer for family vacations with young children, and anyone who pushes back on that gets painted as the person who does not care about making memories. That framing is unfair and he should not accept it. He cared enough to go once, hate it, and still be sitting at the table having this conversation rather than just shutting it down. He deserves a partner who takes his experience seriously, not one who treats his misery at a theme park as an irrelevant data point. If they go to Disney because he eventually caves to the pressure, he is going to be miserable and it will show, and his kids are going to feel that. If they go somewhere else that everyone can actually enjoy, the memories will be better and the trip will cost less and nobody walks away feeling like they were steamrolled. The math here is not complicated. Skip Disney, find the trip that actually fits their family, and spend the leftover money on something that will matter in 10 years. Drop a comment below and let me know which of these stories hit harder for you. And if you stuck around this long, a like and a subscribe would mean a lot.